Hi there guys, welcome to my channel. This is going to be a ball pythons 101 from 100 meters up, and I'm here to talk about a ball python. What are they, where they come from, and if they're a good pet for you. So ball pythons are a very stocky snake. They're very thick. If you're looking at getting a ball python, um, they're very different from something like a corn snake or a king snake. These guys are much thicker. Unlike the colubras that corn snakes and king snakes are, these guys will, like this girl is showing right now, get a good grip on you. Corn snakes, they tend to be very wiggly. You kind of tend to wrangle them to get a good grip on them so they don't fall. These guys, they grip onto you very well. Um, so these guys are found in sub-Saharan Africa, places like Congo, Uganda, Chad, and these guys live primarily in tunnels and termite mounds. They Because of that, we're going to talk about the type of care they're going to need. However, these guys are non-venomous and they're constrictors. So are these guys good pets for you? And I think yes, absolutely. For the young adult that knows how to, handle things with care, these guys are great. You're gonna need to get very little to no supervision if you're a worried father. However, if you're giving a full-grown ball python, which this girl, she is not full-grown. She's around 1,500 grams, and they can get around to 5,000 grams, which is around 2.5 pounds, and they can get much bigger and thicker than this. So I wouldn't recommend giving one of these to a very young family member because they might hurt the snake, and the snake might nip back in defense. Um, but if you know how to treat them lightly, they'll treat you very well. So these guys, being snakes, they eat about once a week. They need to have water in their dish. The enclosures, we're gonna talk about. They you can go between two different choices or three. Um, and their equipment is fairly simple and straightforward. So, starting with their equipment, these guys need some kind of underbelly heat mat. If you go to Petco, PetSmart, they're gonna try to sell you lamps. They can use lamps. However, I think that something like a heat mat would work much better for these guys, as a heat mat helps them digest their food. So this heat mat is gonna need to be connected to a thermostat. The thermostat uh, controls how hot the heat mat can get. So on the hot side where the heat mat is, I'd recommend around 93 degrees, and where the heat and the cool side of the tank on the opposite side, it probably should get around 86 degrees or a little cooler. Don't allow it to get too cold though. Don't let it drop into the 70s or low 70s. Um, so that's what these guys need for basically heat. They're and so these guys eat about once a week, appropriately sized feeders. Uh, Baby ball pythons usually take like pinky rats or hopper mice, and as they get older and bigger, they tend to get a little more larger size prey items. These guys get the more you feed, the faster they get. So if you feed an adequately sized prey item, they'll probably end up eating small rats by the end of the first year. However, if you feed more often, then they'll probably take bigger. So I believe that you should feed at least once a week. I feed around once every 5 days, so that comes out to 2 extra feedings a month, which is fine because these guys, they can take down medium-sized rats. However, I tend to feed smalls. Um, so these guys' enclosure can have substrate that's cocoa based. If you live in climates where there's high levels of humidity, like Florida, or you live in Asian countries like Thailand where their humidity is really high, you can probably have them on newspaper. These guys want a humidity of 60%. I live in the middle of the valley in California where the humidity is around 10%. So that means that I have to that I have to uh, add some supplement to that. The way I do that is I have coconut fiber. Um, I have chunky chip, repta chip, and pro cocoa. It's they're both of these are products you can find on Amazon for around $20 a block. You can probably get enough cocoa to fill quite a few enclosures. If you're have juvenile ball pythons. Um, but it's fairly inexpensive, and there's really no reason not to go for these things. There's other if you go to Petco or PetSmart, they'll try to sell you Aspen. Aspen is probably one of the worst things you can put with these guys, simply because Aspen needs to stay relatively dry, or if not, it starts to mold. So with these guys, if you try to get the humidity correct, Aspen will mold out fairly quickly, and you'll have to replace it. Um, so I advise just to avoid it altogether. There's also things like sand. With these guys, you have to spray down very often. So that will probably make a muddy mess if you try to use sand as your main substrate. Um, and I would not advise it. The last thing is something like a pine. I do not think you should use pine because the pine has resins on it. And it's very you can smell it. With these guys, they might get some of that in their lungs, and it might cause irritation since they're living on it. Um, and with these guys, you'd want to avoid that altogether because these guys are kind of susceptible to respiratory infections. It's probably one of the bigger killers, aside from dehydration. So you guys are probably gonna not want to use that type of substrate. I use Pro Cocoa, and you can also use Rainforest Floor, I think is what it's called, and other other chip-based substrates. If you go to your local reptile shop and you ask about it, they'll probably recommend you something. If they try to push it towards Aspen, I recommend to leave the store because they don't know what they're talking about. So these guys get around 5,000 grams, and so they get into a pretty thick, long snake, around 5 to 6 feet. So their enclosure needs to accommodate that. So some people, there's two camps on the internet. There's glass and then there's tubs. Um, I do not believe that there's no in between. You can do both fine. However, I do prefer tubs, as you can see over here in the corner. I have a little rack myself. Um, the reason why I don't like glass is simply because it's extremely hard to get the humidity for these guys right on a glass container or glass enclosure. It's because they have a screen top. Um, you can have the proper substrate, you can have coconut fiber, however, the humidity just tends to dissipate from the tank. Um, Also, these guys are pretty shy. They're nocturnal, and they quite frankly do not want to see you during the day. If you're up and about and the lights are on, they don't want to be seen. They prefer to be hidden away in their enclosure. Um, and so that's why I don't like glass. However, glass also the benefit of glass is that it offers vertical space. You're gonna have branches and other things like that, and that works quite well for enrichment. Now with tubs, which is what I use, you can get their humidity right if you get a frosted glass like I do. They are able to see that the light is on, so there it's daytime and they, retreat and sleep. And when the lights go off, they understand that it's nighttime and they, uh, crawl around their enclosure more. Humidity, you can get the right humidity. You can catch it. You can adjust for the right humidity. fairly easier. However, a lot of these like these breeder tubs over here, they don't offer much vertical space. You got about a foot of vertical space, and these are breeder breeder tubs that offer around 4 foot by 2 foot, so they're quite large for juvenile snakes, and that's simply because I don't want these guys to be in a little cramped space for like a juvenile ball python, and then have to buy the next rack over, you know. Um, you have to be careful with that, with glass or tubs, getting an enclosure that's too big for your snake, because these guys, if they're in a too big of an enclosure, they will feel like they're out in the open. So if you do get a big enclosure, it's important you have a lot of different hides that can go into, a lot of cover, things to hide behind, things like that, for them to feel comfortable. Because these guys are finicky eaters. Um, this girl has eaten every single time I've offered her food, which is once every 5 days. And there's another girl that's hasn't eaten in around 20 days, 25 days. Um, so it's very important to understand that these guys don't eat every single time you give, and if they don't eat, not to be too worried. What you need to look at is their body, how their body composition is. As you can see, this girl is quite thick. However, you can still see like this ridge, and that lets me know that the snake is not obese. She's in good shape. If she doesn't eat for 15 days, I'm not gonna stress over it. Um, if you have like a hatchling, that has maybe 4 or 5 meals into her, and she or he decides to stop eating, then I'd be much more worried because they don't have enough fat reserves to get them through that. So you need to find out what's stressing them out and and adjust it. With the younger ball pythons, sometimes they will need things like assist feeding if they're not eating and their bodies just can't, their bodies just can't cope with it. So you will have to assist feed, which is putting the prey item inside their mouths and having them swallow. Um, that's something I can get to later. Um, but that is probably one of the harder things that you can get into when you get a ball python. Now these guys, I buy these guys frozen thawed. I do not feed live rats. So what that means is I go to the store, I buy in bulk, I walk in and I say I want 40 rats of a certain size, and within a week or two they get delivered and I go and pick them up. That saves me from taking care of the rats until these guys eat. And it also protects my snakes because sometimes the rats will attack your ball pythons while they're in the middle of taking them down. Since they're not venomous, they bite and wrap. And that's the perfect opportunity for like a rat to come in and uh, sink their teeth into them. So, though frozen thawed, they were more likely to turn down frozen thawed than live. Um, Frozen thawed is just overall more safe. Um, so let's see here. So are these guys a good pet? Absolutely, they are. I recommend ball pythons to anybody trying to get into snakes. These guys do not get they're easy to handle. They get to a pretty good impressive size if you take them out to show off to your family. And they come in what is probably a deciding factor is they come in a lot of different morphs. Um, Different patterns. You see this girl here has these type of weird circles and patterns on her side. Uh, there's different morphs that change that drastically. So what this girl is a Mojave clown, a Mojave because of the type of color and scalation she has, and a clown because of the head, as you can see here. their head pattern's pretty different. So there's clown also has more, has more things going on in the background. However, if you like a yellow snake, you can find one in a ball python. You like a white snake, ball python. You like a black snake, ball python has it. If you, it is something. They come in every single color. Not so much shapes. There is a locality in Africa that does have larger ball pythons, and they get to be pretty big. However, that usually doesn't really come up much when you're trying to buy them. They'll let you know probably if they come from that particular locality. However, they almost all of them get to 5 to 6 feet, which is a perfect manageable size for a young adult or an adult. You can handle them very easy. They don't bite. Um, they will bite you. They will bite you if you handle their food and then put your hands on their face because they're gonna think that your hands are rat. Now, today is feeding days for these guys, and I avoided pulling them out of the freezer until I finished this video simply because if my hands smell like rats or what they eat, they will most likely bite me. So that's something to look out for. So if it's feeding day, don't touch them. Leave them alone. They're gonna when you're heating up your rat with your heat mat or your heat lamp or your warm water or cold water, they're gonna smell it. They're gonna smell it on you. And some of my girls are very food driven. I pull out the tub and they're all ready to bite whatever gets close to their face. One of my male that I have, he will bite you thinking your hands is food. You don't have to touch a rat. But he's much younger, so that's all needs to be taken into consideration when you hold these guys. As they get older, they tend to stop being so snippy. My male is pretty young. He's around 300 grams. He's around, I think, 4 or 5 months old. Um, he's getting good size on him. However, he is a very hungry individual. And that's just his personality, and that's the type of thing you got to look out for and understand. Some of these won't bite you. Some of them will hate your guts, and they just want to be held. Of course, you can work on them, hold them, 10, 15 minutes every day, um, and they will calm down. They will get tamed down, and they'll understand that you're not much of a threat. Because these guys, though their bite doesn't really hurt, a defensive bite anyway, um, that's just to let you know that they don't trust you. Not yet, anyway. Now, a food driven bite hurts quite a bit more because they will bite and they will wrap and they will constrict. Um, Now, it's not like a reticulated python, a 20-foot snake wraps around you. However, these guys do definitely pack a bit of punch and a bit of squeeze. Um, it's nothing really serious. Nothing. It's not like you're gonna need stitches for it. Just have some hand sanitizer at the ready. Um, and if they do have a food bite and they do wrap, just get a bit of hand sanitizer and put some along their mouth, and they're gonna hate the taste and they're gonna spit you out. Um, just be very cautious when they do bite. I know the first reaction is to pull away. However, these guys have pretty fragile teeth. Um, if they snap, it might cause some kind of infection in their mouths, and that's the last thing you want for these guys. Okay, so that pretty much covers up ball python care 101 from a bird's eye view. I am planning to do a little more, a couple more videos on their care, specifically different types of equipment you can use, different types of enclosures, um, tubs, different types of glass enclosures, what to do and what not to do, and particularly their morphs. Um, Morphs is probably one of the most important reasons why I got into these ball pythons. Um, just the coloration is staggering. And as I do these videos, I'll show you a bit more of my collection. I have about 7 snakes, all of them are ball pythons, and for good reason. Each one is different. A lot of their personalities are very much different from each other. Um, Chocolate here, she tends to rap hard and hang around. Some of my others, they take off. They're very fast. They want to look around. They want to explore. And they don't have such a strong grip on you either. So one of my favorite snakes, one of my favorite reptiles, ball pythons. Absolutely wonderful. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments. If you have any suggestions for the future, let me know. Looking forward to make more videos and talking with you guys. If you have any questions on the type of care, or if your ball python's not eating or something like that, um, let me know. Maybe I'll be able to help. All right. Take care. Have a good day.